You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get started again.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? America Off the Rails has been declared a conservatives-only safe zone. Only conservatives allowed from this point forward. Any liberal, socialist, butthurt, hippie, tree huggers, please exit the facility immediately. Again, attention please. America Off the Rails is now designated as a conservative safe zone only. All butthurt, tree-hugging, hippie, free-to-be, you and me types exit the facility immediately. Thank you.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
All right, folks. Well, happy Thursday evening. That's right. We are one day away from Friday. Come on. Is that, for those of us that work Monday through Friday, is it me or is Friday really like the best day of the week? Because you have the anticipation of the weekend and it's not quite here yet. Because I know for me that when I wake up and it's Saturday morning, I'm already thinking, dang, tomorrow's Sunday, really? But anyway, so we are rounding out Friday Eve. Now, if you're just tuning in, you've missed one of the best nights on talk radio. Thursday nights are one of the nights that you should be on K98 Talk nonstop. We have Wake Up America Radio with Dr. Arrington and Lou Esposito. We also then round it out with Game On with JD and Stacy. And, of course, I am, as always, the cleanup hitter here Monday through Friday, right here on K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network. Speaking of which, if you haven't been to the website in a while, I do encourage you to go check out the SparkRadioNetwork.com. We have had a facelift, a crazy about 48 hours worth of work in 12 hours facelift from someone that I'm about to introduce. You may know her already. We have started airing her podcast here, right here on K98 Talk. She is Jessica Sanders, and she is with me this evening. She's actually going to be hanging out with me for as long as she wants to hang out. She has the opportunity to hang out for the entire hour, but I'm not sure what her plans are. But she has been working nonstop behind the scenes to get the Spark Radio Network website up and running, and a lot more clean than it was 48 hours ago. And without further ado, the host of Jesse's POV, Miss Jessica Sanders. How are you this evening, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me on the air. It's kind of exciting. First time I've ever been live. Usually I do pre-recorded because, well, I still am not quite familiar with producing, pushing all the buttons and talking at the same time and pulling up the new current events and news articles that I use and sound clips and everything all at once. So that's why I do pre-recorded, but I do try and do current events. I do tend to stay away from politics for the most part, although I did do a short podcast, and I do say short because it was only 15 minutes. I usually shoot for 30 on Ted Cruz's citizenship and is he a natural born citizen? And I pulled some stuff from Mark Levin's show and put that in. So it's really cool. So
I have had a chance to check that out, and I enjoyed it. I do have to admit. So far, you have done, counting that one, that's 3 now, I believe. We'll be running 2 of them as soon as the show concludes, and actually, if I can get to it as soon as we're done, I'm going to go ahead and load up the little short one too, but I want to make sure that the other 2 run in their entirety so I don't mess anything up. Now, for those of you who haven't checked it out yet, I do encourage you to stay tuned afterwards. Like I said, this will be a full hour's worth of content and then about a 15-minute special loading shortly thereafter. It does cover a lot of different things, so without giving too much away, because at this point we're going to hope that maybe people are listening that haven't tuned into it yet, what are some of the things that you've talked about on your podcast that you've done so far? Other than, of course, the citizenship one.
I did an entire half hour on North Korea and their nuclear missile program, and I could have gone on for longer, but I wanted to keep it to a half an hour. I'm working on something on terrorism and how it affects the world and who are terrorists, where do they come from, kind of a terrorism 101. Also trying to work on getting a special guest for that show to give common everyday tips on how you as an average citizen can stay safe and situational awareness and how that can help you. I've also done, the first one I did was basically why am I doing a podcast? So, because none of you have ever heard of me. Just a real quick thing about my backstory. I am a United States Special Forces widow. My husband was killed in action. Jesse is not my real name. Jesse is a pseudonym. Why do I use a pseudonym? I do that to protect those I love and care about. In this day of technology and information, with ISIS out there and all their hacking skills, I wanted to be able to speak my mind and do it without people like ISIS catching on to who I really was and where I was. So I don't usually go into too many personal details on the show. Sometimes I'll mention something. For the record, I am remarried. I did wait a significant amount of time after the loss of my Special Forces husband to remarry. So, and Rick's right. I have spent the past 48 hours doing almost nothing but working on the website. So please, I'd love to see as many hits as possible on the SparkRadioNetwork.com. There's a comments form on our advertising specials page. Feel free to send feedback. It comes to me, myself, and Rick. So you can just click, if you don't want to buy a 30-second or 60-second ad, there is an option to say it's about other. Just fill in a comment. I'd be happy to have feedback on it. So I had fun doing it, but I've never built an entire website before.
Well, to be fair, there was at least a framework. I just have the programming skills of a 5-year-old.
Well, I actually have to say my programming skills weren't much better. I actually have to give a huge shout out and great thanks to my friend Judy L. Moore. She lives in Christchurch, New Zealand, and she runs Black Wolf Editorial. And while she is not a website developer, she has tons of amazing mad skills. She actually has a PhD. Her website, if you've got any kind of writing, whether you're working on an academic paper, a manuscript, short story, poetry, whatever, I encourage you to check out her website at blackwolfeditorial.com. She is not only an awesome friend, but she has amazing mad editor skills. She's got some services that you won't find anywhere else. She's got things like if you need your bio rewritten. How many people think about their bio and what it says and how it's worded? I never gave it a second thought. So, yeah, and that's services you don't normally find. She's got the usual manuscript critiques, developmental and line editing. And like I said, the bio service is just one of those, wow. If you're an author, she'll help you write a book cover blurb or come up with develop promotional material. Like I said, she's pretty amazing. Now, speaking of books, I'm going to mention something. I'm going to mention something. If you have been listening, you know that America Off the Rails and JD and Stacy is going live May 1st in Dallas. Now, anybody out there, indie published, self-published, small press, even larger press, Rick is offering a very special book promotion. You can have about a 15-second commercial for your book or for your special event or fundraiser on web, anything in the Dallas area or anything that's not geographically bound. For $100, you can get a special 15-second blurb into or out of a segment. Dallas is a top 5 market. $100 to get on the air there, that's an amazing rate. So I just had to absolutely brag about that.
Well, thank you. Saves me from having to do it in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. I'm good for something.
All right. So now that you have dipped your toe into the water, so to speak, when it comes to doing a radio podcast, what are your thoughts so far? Are you getting much feedback on them so far? Are you positive, negative, people reaching out to you yet? I mean, you've only done 2, so I don't know how much you're getting, but I know that it's usually at least worth asking.
I've been getting a few. I am on Twitter at Jesse's POV. I also have a website, jessespov.com, and which is, I think when Rick saw my website, that's why he asked me to, kind of asked, and I kind of went, wait a minute, you realize we're sending out all this information for advertising and the website looks like what? So I basically said, give me this thing. Get out of my way. I tend to have 3 modes. When I set my sights on something, you've got 3 choices. Get out of my way, get on board, get steamrolled. Because when I get that laser focused target thing, look in my eyes, you don't stand a chance. I'm just too stubborn for that. So
I can attest to that.
Yeah, I don't think Rick thought I was going to be able to transform the website as much as I did in 48 hours. So I basically said, give me this thing, shove. You, out of my way, I got this. Scram. So, and I took over. I happen to be a news junkie, so now I have to admit, while the election cycle is top news in the United States, I tend to be more of an international news buff. I don't know.
Translation, folks, she hates my show.
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, I don't. It's just I like my politics in measured doses. Although I will say the Hillary server things and the other satirical things you run are absolutely hilarious, and I find that. And the 5 minute conservative, is it?
5 Minute Patriot.
5 Minute Patriot. His segments are awesome too. So, like I said, I do listen to the shows.
Well, we are hoping soon that the 5 Minute Patriot becomes the 60 Minute Patriot, but that's not supposed to happen until sometime in May or June. So we're just kind of same general idea with you, letting him start out with the short stuff that he's comfortable with, and then at some point, if he wants to build up, great, we've got room. If not, then I'll just keep running it the way I'm running it now.
Hey, I enjoy him. It's like I said, I'm very much non-PC. I am not for political correctness at all. I'm sorry. Political correctness is killing this country. I'm sorry. Since when is someone who broke our laws to get into this country? Wait a minute. They broke our laws. So now they're an undocumented person versus illegal alien. Now, I don't mean alien in the sense of comes from Mars, but they're not a citizen of this country, and they did break our laws. So now they become an undocumented person eligible, and President Obama, I believe, wants to make them eligible for welfare benefits. And then instead of taking care of the vets, the men and women who have served this country and fought and in some cases bled for this country, who've worn that uniform, which, by the way, obviously I have a very strong military bent. Hint, Special Forces widow. Less than 1%, yes, 1% of the American population raises their right hand and wears that uniform. So instead of putting money into taking care of our vets, he wants to bring tens of thousands of refugees to this country and pay for them. Excuse me, how about taking care of the men and women who fight for this country first? Now, if all of our vets were taken care of and had the health care and everything and all the support and everything they need, and while I will say there are tons of wonderful organizations out there who, nonprofits and charities and other organizations who do things for the vets, those organizations stepped in to fill the vacuums in places that the government was falling short. So instead of bringing all these refugees in, why not take care of our vets? Freedom isn't free, trust me. I have personally felt its impact. There is nothing like that knock on the door saying, in my case, your husband is never coming home. It is one of, how you have those life-altering moments? Trust me. That was one of them. So you going to get a word in edgewise here, Rick, or are you just letting me jabber?
Hey, I just figured I'd let you run with it for a while. They tune in and hear me babble like 5 nights a week. And sometimes, in some cases, I'm actually heard about 4 or 5 times a day by the time it's all said and done. So I'm sure some folks like actually hearing another voice every once in a while. Now, back to what we were talking about a moment ago, because it was interesting when you started talking about the whole immigration thing. I've tried to use an argument for years to try to get the point across that I'm trying to make folks understand exactly how broken things are, and they just don't seem to equate it. But to me, it makes perfect sense. My point with all of these folks that keep saying that we should have open borders and everything else, and that everybody should be able to come and go however they choose, my argument with them is then I would like you to please stop locking your doors and your windows at night so that anybody can come in and make themselves at home in your own house, because it's basically what you're saying. That's not the same thing, Rick. Really? How is it not the same thing? You're basically saying that we should leave our country, our home, wide open for anybody who wants to come in here. So why, if you are living by that philosophy, should you not do the same thing on a micro scale that you're asking that we do on a macro scale? And that's where the argument usually stops. Because
my argument against open borders, a little bit different, but not all that unfounded? Look at the EU. Right now, if you can sneak into an EU country, any one of them, and some of them have some pretty wishy-washy borders, whether you show up on a shoreline or whatever, once you're into one country and you get past that border, whether you slip up on a coastline somewhere off a small boat, whether you cross a land border by hanging off a truck, stowing away in something, get smuggled in the trunk of a car, whatever, once you get in, you're free to do as you please. And has anybody remember Paris attack, Brussels attack? And we want to, I'm sorry, in my mind, a country isn't a country without borders. You cannot defend a country that essentially does not have borders. I mean, okay, Paris attackers fled to where? Brussels, Belgium. Hint, EU country to EU country. Nobody could stop them because there's essentially no borders inside the EU. And it's like, so they basically, set off attacks in Paris, fled to another country, hid out in places where the police over in that country are afraid to go, and then came back out, resurfaced again to kill more people. Now, I have to say, Brussels kind of had a hand in probably initiating the fact that the attack happened and when it happened, and here's why. Personal opinion here, you do not put out in the press, oh, we captured so-and-so. That's fine. He's cooperating. He's telling us everything. He's cooperating. He's telling us everything should be need to know. And the public, no offense here, doesn't. It's kind of like classified information. So some information is just too sensitive to share with John Q. Public, as much as they might want to know. Had they wanted to fill some need for the public, they could say, we captured, I forget the guy's name, but we captured this guy and we are speaking with him, interrogating, talking to him, whatever terminology you want to throw out there. I think interrogation is probably a little harsh, but, but you don't put out in the news what information your sources give you. That's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Hello, that's a signal to the terrorists. That's like saying, hey, picking up the phone and calling the local terrorist network. Hey, whatever you're planning, guess what? We're going to have all the details soon. So either A, cancel it, which chances are terrorists terrorists want two things. Well, the one thing they want is publicity. The other thing they want is mass casualties. Now, they want it off for a variety of reasons. It depends on which terrorist group we're talking about, and I'm not going to go into that detail because Rick, you do not need Terrorism 101 exploding on your show right now, as interesting as it might be, but it depends on what terrorist group you're discussing, what their motives are, blah, blah, blah. And I will say there are certain terrorist groups that I swear just blow stuff up to blow stuff up. So the whys behind them, but yeah, for whatever reason, saying that, Mr. Terrorist that we captured is talking and telling us everything. That's like I said, taking out an ad in the newspaper, picking up the phone, calling his terrorist friends going, guess what? We're going to have all the details soon. So whatever you're doing is going to be of no use. That's not going to deter a terrorist. That's going to wave a red flag in front of a bull saying, attack now. Don't wait. Attack before we can get all this information and do something about it. Because, okay, I've learned this. I learned most of what I learned by watching and listening to everybody around me. And as a Special Forces widow, I'm surrounded by people who are literally on the pointy spear. And people who, when my husband was gone, I didn't know where he was or when he was coming home. Sometimes I'd have a clue. He'd say, yeah, I should only be, 2 weeks or less. This one's going to take about a month. I'll see you in 3 months. And then there's other times we'd be at a cookout or someone's house or doing something social on a pick-a-day, Friday afternoon. His phone would ring. He'd walk away from everyone, have a phone call, come back and say, we got to leave now because I have to go home and then I have to leave. And trust me, that happened more than once. And it was times like that where it was like, okay. I never asked him where he was. If he could tell me, he'd tell me. If he couldn't, he couldn't. I will say the not knowing was one of the hardest parts. But like I said, you don't wave a red flag in front of a bull. That's just a bad idea. Bad idea.
You do if you're a matador.
Yeah, but then you're properly prepared. You've already set the trap for the bull. In this case, Brussels hadn't set a trap for the bull. They were just running around waving red flags, going, "Yeah, look at us, Mr. Bull. Look at us, Mr. Bull." But they hadn't set the trap. Now, if they'd actually set a trap and had all the information and actually knew who they were and actually had eyes on surveillance and could have like just swooped in on these people as soon as they started moving, that would have been one thing. They didn't.
You have to ask yourself why, though, because they had to know that they were going to trigger a reaction when they started talking about the fact that not only was the guy cooperating, he was basically, I mean, they put in the paper that he was basically telling them anything they needed to know. They had to realize they were going to spark a reaction. So if they're going to be dumb enough to put something like that in the paper, why not try to put it to good use, would have been my question.
Okay, here's the thing. Just like in our government, the right hand doesn't always talk to the left hand. And this is pure speculation and an opinion. All right. The press people, oh great, we gotta tell the public. Whereas your intel people are going, will you please shut up or be quiet? Will you please stitch your mouth closed? You know, intelligence people don't like press people. So the PR relations department and the intelligence department, let's just put it this way, they don't get along unless the intelligence department can take a sledgehammer and go press department. No. Squash. Bug. Squash. Sit on it. You're not allowed to talk. Now, there are certain stories. I mean, basically the way things are decided on whether or not it's going to be released is, one, is it possible to keep it out of the news? If it is some small thing that can be kept out of the news that no one's ever going to hear about, you may never know about it. Trust me. There are things that that never made the news, or we'll hear about them 10, 15, 20 hours later, or 20 years later in some cases. Sometimes someone will release it a few years after the fact, or we'll get snippets of it at some point. But there are other things that are so big and so monumental and so earth-shattering. The intelligence community goes, all right, there's no way we can completely squash this like a bug and keep it out of the news cycle. Right, so and that's when they've got to try and play nice. But the intelligence people's like, all right, we're going to tell the people as little as possible and not much of that. I'm going to go back to an old analogy that I've heard used around the military world. All right. Say, in actuality, what happened was a meteor struck the Earth. All right. The next person up the chain of the command will hear something like, a small pebble landed on Earth. By the time it reached the top of the chain of command, there were some lovely shooting stars out there last night. Well, the intel community wants the meteor landing on the planet to be put out as, there were shooting stars last night. Whereas the press people want to say, the meteor hit the Earth last night. And so that's where they've got to try and work together and find a middle ground. And if the press people run ahead without checking with the intel people, that's where things blow up. And I suspect, but can't prove, that's what happened. So, like I said,
makes sense, I guess, when you put it that way.
Like I said, the press people, their job is to work with the press and put out news stories. And trust me, reporters will gobble up those news stories. Speaking of news, all right, back to North Korea for a minute. I know, I'm just running all over the place. We've gone from terrorists to North Korea. Well, in a way, you could say they're terrorists, but they're really not.
They're one and the same. I mean, you got a little midget guy with his finger on the button. So,
oh, please, Kim Jong-un, yes. All right, the founder, Kim Il-sung, his birthday is coming up. So every year, the founder's birthday is like a major national celebration. I mean, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you can get in major trouble and even end up in a labor camp. I am not kidding. So, all right. So Kim Il-sung's birthday's coming up. So the country has this tradition of trying to doing this big show of force. So they tried to launch a missile. All right. And
the missile needed Viagra. It's just a really easy way to say it.
Yeah, it failed. Now they've been shooting off a lot of missiles and rockets lately. In fact, I don't know if anybody, if your listeners have caught on, North Korea has developed has miniaturized a nuclear warhead enough to get it onto a medium range missile. What does medium range mean? Means about 850 to 1,200 miles, give or take, depending on the exact specifications and payload and everything on of the warhead. So 850 miles, you go, all right, well, that can never reach us. That can never hurt us. First of all, any nuclear detonation is going to have an effect on the whole world. Just look at what happened with Fukushima. All right, or Chernobyl, even for that matter. Like I said, I'm a news junkie. All right, so any nuclear detonation is going to impact the whole world. Aside here, no, I'm not a save the planet type, but come on, nuclear detonations are pretty serious. All right, 2, if you're an American, 850 miles from Pyongyang, or there are plenty of American-rich targets in that area. There's all the troops that are stationed over in South Korea, and trust me, we have quite a presence in South Korea. You go, yeah, well, that's just the troops in South Korea. No, that 850 to 1,250 mile radius also encompasses Japan and other strategic areas of our interest. So on my North Korea podcast, if you check out my Spreaker thing, I actually uploaded the graphic, a photograph showing the approximate. Basically, it took a circle and went out 1,250 miles from North Korea and showed you what a potential nuclear missile from that country could strike. I was a little taken aback by it. It was a little scary that they can reach further than you might think. So, now, speaking of reckless military acts, okay. Everybody's trying to be king of the hill, right? I'm talking U.S. versus Russia. All right, if you've been paying attention at all, you know Putin has no respect for Obama. Can't say I blame him. But I'm going to say this, and I couldn't if I was using my real name. Another reason for the pseudonym. I think our current commander-in-chief has all the defensive instincts of a farm-raised butterball turkey. So, you like that one, huh, Rick?
Oh, and well, it goes along with something that I usually put out around every November. This graphic with Obama holding his arms over his head, and he's like, "In the spirit of this coming holiday, I decree that I've pardoned myself and Michelle, the 2 biggest turkeys that I know." So,
cool. Glad you like my turkey analogy. So anyway, the other day, and the video's out there online, 2 Russian warplanes flew simulated attack passes near the USS guided missile, a United States guided missile destroyer in the Baltic Sea. Now, the video's out there online, and I went to a military pilot friend and said, take a look at this. And he basically said that was very unprofessional behavior on the part of the pilots. I mean, I will say this, not all Russians are bad. You cannot paint. The only group I will paint with an entire brush is a terrorist. Terrorists are bad, period. Otherwise, I'm going to say not all fill in the blank are bad. But anyway, so he said that was a very cowboy move, and that was a very unsafe act. And it's only a time before something like that gets people killed by accident.
Come on, everybody's seen Rocky IV. All Russians are bad. No, I'm just playing. Bad actors, maybe. Oh, sorry. He wasn't actually Russian.
No, but look the stereotypical Russian.
Yeah, the stereotypical roid rage Russian. All right, so that bit of levity was also to get us to draw to a close for a moment, because we really do got to take a break to pay some bills. We're about 5 minutes long. We'll be back here in just a couple minutes, folks. You are listening to America Off the Rails. I am joined this evening by my guest, Miss Jessica Sanders. For those of you who have not checked out her podcast yet, make sure you stay tuned. They will be up as soon as this show concludes, and you can hear them right here on K98 Talk. And we will be right back here in just a couple minutes. All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
The wrong way. Welcome to the place.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement, and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry, or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
The staff of K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network is proud to announce that our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson has been selected as one of the top conservative talk show hosts in the nation for his program, America Off the Rail. Again, congratulations to Rowdy Rick Robinson for a job well done and another reason to stay connected to K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry, or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. Again, I'm joined this evening by one Miss Jessica Sanders, the host of Jesse's POV, and a Special Forces widow who's decided that she was going to use some of her life experiences and some of the other things that she's learned along the way and use those in a podcast. So again, why don't we go ahead and finish out what we were talking about before, because we had a bunch of different topics going on all around at the same time. So was there anything else that you wanted to touch on about any of that stuff before we change gears?
No, I think I left it at a pretty good spot, except to say that, I feel that our current commander-in-chief has, personal opinion here, has made us look weak on the international stage. He draws a red line in Syria, and then when it's crossed, he fails to act. He did an apology tour. It was just one of those things. Every time I turned around, he was lowering the world's impression of this country in 90% of people's eyes. So, now, I know you normally talk politics, so I do have something to say about politics.
Actually, before you go too far into that, one thing about that line in the sand thing, there was part of that everybody missed because he kept talking about the lines in the sand that he was drawing. They didn't realize that he meant red lines in his daughter's sand art. So that's why it never really worked out.
Actually, there's something that I picked up on one of the smaller news sources I check on regularly, that he actually had authorized the strikes, and there were actually planes in the air to retaliate, and then he canceled it at the last minute.
You know why, don't you? Valerie Jarrett has his sack in her purse, so she told him no, and that was like, okay.
I don't know why, and I really don't want to speculate. I just know that kind of chain jerking and the impact it has on the morale of the military. Yeah. It isn't a pretty sight. You're going. No, you're not.
Yeah.
But we're already halfway there. Turn around.
Pretty much the same thing that happened in Benghazi. I'm just saying. I don't even really want to bring that up, but one of the things that has irked me to no end about that whole scenario is someone was standing there with a laser designator illuminating a target. Those will not work if there's not a weapon system in range.
There are a ton of things I could say about Benghazi. I'm going to have to do a podcast on Benghazi because I could fill your entire hour with Benghazi.
Well, we are talking about maybe doing this as a monthly thing. Maybe once in a while.
Okay, well, since we brought up Benghazi, let's talk about Hillary Clinton. Which brings me to the Democratic debate, which are actually happening as we're speaking. There is, for those of you who don't know, there is a Democratic debate going on tonight.
There is?
So,
are you sure? They usually bury those things lately, don't they?
Well, Hillary Clinton tried. The first times and dates she offered Bernie Sanders were either against the NCAA Final Four championship games, as in, the Final Four. Who's going to turn on a debate when they could be watching excellent basketball? Early on a Sunday morning, like 8 or 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, even if you're not a churchgoer, chances are you are either A, asleep, B, busy with your family, or C, not going to turn on a debate.
Eating breakfast and don't want to listen to Hillary.
Well, yeah, that's
come
another...
on. Yeah, Sunday morning, who wants to turn on the old couple in the balcony for the Muppets if one of them had a sex change? Because that's basically those two on a stage. I'm just saying.
Now you've got me absolutely cracking up. But no, so I personally think that, can anyone name an actual accomplishment that Hillary Clinton's? And hint, traveling lots of miles as Secretary of State doesn't count.
Accomplishments of Hillary Clinton. Apparently not even being able to chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. Because, there's that whole concussion thing.
Yeah, and there's people that speculate she still has a brain injury from that, and that it was more severe than the public ever knew.
I disagree with that statement. You can't injure what you don't have.
Well, she has to have some brain function or she wouldn't be living.
Yeah, that's autonomic. Debbie,
So,
Just saying.
but if anyone hasn't noticed, the Democratic debates have always been scheduled either opposite something big or at weird times. And being the news junkie I am, I have actually noticed that. It's been one of those things of you're holding a debate. When? Wait a minute. Just because I like to stay up to date on things, I would love to watch this debate. But it's at a bad time. I did DVR some of them. I did catch some on, satellite radio or rebroadcasts. But it was like, could you have picked a worse time? And I think actually the thing was that Hillary wasn't as prepared to have a serious campaign challenger. She figured it was her turn, it was her coronation, and she was going to waltz into the nomination. Well, then here comes Bernie Sanders. She's like, okay, yeah, he won't amount to a hill of beans. Well...
Yeah, but let that sink in for a second. How screwed up is our country when Bernie Sanders is a serious contender for president?
True, and I can't say I agree with any of his... very many, if any, of his policies. I mean, I'm very much a hawk. I'm for a strong defense.
I will give him one thing. The one thing that I wish that somebody of more conservative leanings would pick up and run with was his idea to decentralize the banks, because that stuff's crazy. I'm just going to be completely honest. And this is one of the things that I've actually had somebody threaten to yank my conservative card for what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it again. During the first Obama term, and I believe it was even the tail end of the Bush 43 second term, when they started doing all the bailouts to the big banks, there was an easy way to get that done and save the economy all at the same time if we were going to start handing out money like it was coming out of a cookie jar. They could have actually put the name of the homeowners on the check and put the banks on there with them, so that the people were actually getting to hand the checks back to the bank to pay off their loans. It would have saved the economy millions of dollars, billions of dollars. It's not very conservative, but if we're already going to start handing out money anyway, we might as well at least do it in a way that helps the public, which they have done in other countries, by the way, in case anybody was wondering.
All right, since you mentioned centralized banking, I've got a question for you. Is the Federal Reserve a government entity?
No.
No. To quote an author, Brad Thor. Yes, he is a New York Times bestselling author, and he's not afraid to speak his mind. He does quite a bit of it on Twitter.
See, there she goes name dropping again, folks. We're saying, just play.
Hey, I like to follow interesting people, and I found a number of his books after my husband passed and started reading. In fact, Brad Thor actually turned the real history of the Federal Reserve into a thriller novel. He likes to write what he calls faction, where you don't know where the facts end and the fiction starts. But anyway, back to what his quote is: the Federal Reserve is about as federal as Federal Express. They stuck the name federal on it just to make it sound better, make it more palatable. So it's just, and if you pull out your money and look, it says Federal Reserve Note. It doesn't say U.S., at the very top it says Federal Reserve Note. And if the Federal Reserve isn't a government entity, and according to the Constitution, the government's supposed to be the one to print the money, wait a minute, it just left me scratching my head.
Yeah, well, speaking of things that leave you scratching your head, and this is coming from somebody who's a political junkie. The other side of the aisle, because, we were talking about the debates a second ago. We started talking about all the weird things they've been doing about the weird schedules for the debates and everything else. What about this whole superdelegate situation where Bernie Sanders keeps winning all of these states and Hillary is still getting more of the delegates in the states that he's winning? Does that make sense to anybody else? I mean, I'm not a fan of Bernie's, but I'm just saying if he's actually winning the states, shouldn't he get the delegates?
Well, in some ways, I'd have to say, and I'm not a Trump fan, but Donald Trump, in a way, is right. The system is rigged, but in this case, the Democratic system is rigged against Bernie Sanders. Now, personally, opinion here. If Donald Trump can't handle reading the rule book for how delegates are administered in 50 states, all the states and territories, and abiding by those rules, and these rules were published over a year ago, and he has to whine about the fact that even though Colorado had an election, that wasn't their process for delegates. All right, primaries like this and delegate processes are governed by the parties. They are not regulated by the government. The parties rent the machines, they rent the polling places. They essentially cover the costs. And it's up to each candidate to read the rule book and know how to obtain the delegates. I mean, the state parties can almost say or do anything. They could say you have to be able to juggle 6 eggs. I've never seen one that took it to that extreme, but they could get away with just about anything.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a little bit different because, I mean, Donald Trump argument really doesn't even hold any water. And this is the same argument that I've been having on Twitter all day. Because, again, the Colorado, the folks of Colorado decided how they wanted their state to run. They then have a Democratic Party in Colorado, and they have a Republican Party in Colorado. Those parties are the ones that set up their rules. So for all of the folks that are not even in Colorado, that are whining about how it's rigged and how it's not fair and how they need to make changes, these are the same folks that up until 5 minutes ago were screaming about 10th Amendment rights and how the state should have the ability to be able to govern themselves, but then something happens in a state that they don't like and all of a sudden there suddenly needs to be changes. And then one of the biggest arguments that I've been having all day is somebody that keeps coming repeatedly back onto my timeline is like, well, this is about the Colorado State Republican Party, not the state of Colorado. I said, you're still missing my point because you don't live in Colorado. It's not up to you. You don't have the right to tell them how they should do things. If the folks that actually live in Colorado want to change the system and they realize that maybe it doesn't work the way they thought it was going to work, that's up to them. But until they decide to make that change, all you can do is sit back and whine like you're doing right now because they don't have to listen to you because it's their state.
All right. Speaking about states things, have you heard about North Carolina in the news lately? And how many performers, Bruce Springsteen, Ringo Starr, and I think there was another one, decided to cancel their appearances in the state of North Carolina actions of the politicians. My thing to these entertainers is, why are you punishing your fans, the people who essentially write your paychecks, over the acts of the politicians? I'm sorry, you may not need the fans of X state, but you may tick some of them off, and some of them may say, well, I already had tickets to your concert. Yeah, I can get my money back, but that's not the point. The point was I wanted to see you.
Well, I have another thought with that, and it's another one that I've been catching quite a bit of flack on. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. Someone that is an entertainer can actually stand up for their beliefs, whatever they may be, and decide that they're going to boycott something because they don't agree with the decisions of somebody in a particular state. But a gay couple walk into a bake shop, and if they don't make that, and they're going to get married, and the bake shop doesn't bake them the wedding cake, then they get fined. To me, there's no real distinction there. The same rule, and because that person that is holding that concert is offering a good or a service. Therefore, they don't have the right to discriminate regardless.
I will say that there is a way out for all those bakers who don't want to bake those cakes. Say that you only bake, go under contract with a local church or several of them, or local religious affiliated organization, saying you will only cater weddings or make cakes for weddings that are held with this organization or that organization. And that is a legal way to not have to bake that cake.
Yeah, but that means... But that's kind of my whole point, though. When did we become so namby-pamby and milquetoast that, so John the baker doesn't want to bake you a cake, so instead of going to sue the baker, who was perfectly willing to bake you a cake and was only a quarter mile down the road, you're going to bring a lawsuit against John the baker. When the whole point of and again, what happens when all of these people that have paid all these money for these concert tickets, even though they got their money back because, you know, how many hours did they spend online or however much time they spent to get them? I mean, when are people going to start doing class action lawsuits against these idiots that cancel concerts just because, oh, your state did something stupid? Really? You took my money. You told me you were going to have a concert. You should have the concert. I mean, if we're and this is my point. If we're going to have those same type of rules for bakeries and everywhere else, then no matter who's offering a good or service, they shouldn't have the ability to say, well, I'm not going to do that because I disagree with this or I disagree with that. If we're going to have those type of rules, we need to have them for everybody, or we need to have them not at all. I'm personally a fan of not at all, because if a baker doesn't want to bake me a cake, I'm perfectly willing to take my business elsewhere.
I feel that way about other issues. There's businesses that don't allow you to bring a weapon on the premises, and I am a concealed carry permit holder. What state I have my permit in is no offense, it's need to know, and you and your listeners don't.
It's the state of Nunya business.
Exactly, it's the state of Nunya, and I am often armed. Yes, I'm a Second Amendment supporter. I am very much pro-gun. You don't think I was married to a Special Forces soldier without learning how to shoot, do you?
Well, I would hope not.
Waste of a resource.
I know, right?
So, anyway, businesses that have those no gun signs on their door lose my business. If I can't walk in your facility, business, legally, with my firearm concealed, and also another point, how do you know if I'm carrying or not if it's concealed? Because if a weapon is properly concealed, you don't know if I have it.
You didn't hear this from me, and I didn't just say this on live radio, but research the rules in your state. In my particular state, if you are caught carrying concealed, all they can do is ask you to leave. At that point, if you refuse to leave, they can charge you with criminal trespass, which is a misdemeanor. Don't know about your state, but just thought you might want to know.
Well, in the state of Nunya, I'm sure the rules vary, but I'm not going to go into what my state law says because, well, that might be giving too much away.
Well, no, I didn't say give it out now. I'm saying if you don't know.
Two, but yeah, and personally, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
Pretty much.
I would rather have to face a jury for carrying a concealed weapon where maybe I shouldn't have it. No, I'm not talking about courthouses, banks, federal buildings. I'm talking about Joe's Pizza Place. I am against gun-free zones. I think gun-free zones are like saying, criminals, terrorists, aim here. It's like putting a bullseye on your establishment.
Before everybody got so freaked out, I used to call them fish in a barrel zones, but people started complaining.
I can see why you'd call them fish in a barrel zones.
But anyway,
the only thing that is going to stop a madman with a gun is someone else with a gun. In your very own state, there was a while back, someone went on a rampage, beheading people and hacking people up at a meatpacking plant. What stopped him, this madman, was a firearm, was a reserve sheriff who happened to be a manager or owner, I don't remember the details off the top of my head of that business, went out to his vehicle, picked up his firearm, and went back in and stopped this person who almost beheaded a woman. So the only thing that's going to stop a madman intent on doing harm is a firearm in many cases. It's not the only case, and I'm not saying that everybody, I'm saying another personal opinion piece. If you're going to own a weapon, I don't care if that weapon is mace, firearm, whatever weapon means to you. If you're going to own a weapon, you must know how to use it safely, and practice with it. Practice wearing the clothes that you normally wear, practice removing, and practice to the point where you are proficient. Because trust me, the added stress of having to figure out how to use that weapon could get you killed.
All right, folks. Well, on that note, we are officially out of time. My, oh my, where did the hour go? All right, so instead of playing commercials, stay tuned, because at the end, we're going to have a special from Mr. Jason DeWilkins. You may remember he used to have a show with us here, and he's kind of the guy of 1,000 voices. So on the way out, we're going to play something new from him. Don't go away. I'll be back with you live tomorrow night. Thanks again to Miss Jessica Sanders for hanging out with me for the night, and stay tuned for her shows right after this one ends.
Don't.
See a picture of the corruption, okay? Look at what the DNC is doing to Bernie Sanders. He's won like how many states, okay? Look at the delegates. They're giving it to Hillary because they don't want to listen to the voters on the DNC. The Republicans are worse. They're worse. Isn't that right, Bernie? What do you think?
Well, this would be one of the rare times where I agree with Donald Trump. And I think that, Donald, you are part of the problem. You are part of the millionaires and billionaires who are taking advantage of the middle class and exploiting the American dream. But in this instance, in this particular instance, I think you're right. It is wrong. It is wrong in what they're doing. Well, I think it's wrong, too, that no one gives me any time on the debates, okay? I can't even talk at all without people.
Kasich, listen, no one asked you to be in this conversation anyway, okay? Get out of here. You're irrelevant. You're low energy, okay?